Assalamu alaikum. In this lecture, we will discuss critical reading. As I've shared with you the outline for this semester, so we will see that there will be lots of reading and analysis. So I thought that would be really important if we understand how can we read critically and how we can analyze a certain text. So this lecture is based on theory. I've taken certain material from internet and compiled it for your accessibility, so I think that would be really helpful. So note down the points and tips and techniques how we can read an article or a piece of writing critically and we can analyze it better. So this lecture would be helpful for all the lessons that we will be reading in this semester and all the stories that we will be discussing. So the first and crucial point would be how we can read critically. I already discussed with you that first of all, we did reading comprehension, in which we try to understand the text. Now we are moving forward to understand how we can critically read a piece of writing. Let's begin. So basically, what is critical reading? By critical, we does not mean any negative idea. Generally, when we assume someone is being critical, we would see that he kind of negates the idea, or he is not in favor of the certain idea. But here, when we are talking in the context of critical reading, it does not mean being negative about something or not appreciating something. Critical would include both appreciation as well as critical in general sense. So when we are reading something critically, we would try to analyze its positive as well as negative points. So by critical, we would mean we have to open our mind to all the aspects of a piece of writing. So we would be reading it from an open mind, and then we would be evaluating it from positive as well as negative perspective. So generally, when we're talking about critical reading, the definition would be an active approach to reading that involves an in-depth examination of the text. So whenever we are reading a text actively with an open mind and we are trying to analyze or examine it in depth, that would be called critical reading. Okay, so when we were talking about reading comprehension, that was a kind of a reading in which we had certain questions and we were trying to analyze or understand what the passage was about or what the text was saying. While when we are talking about critical, we would go in depth. That would mean we would try to understand the underlying meaning as well. Okay, in reading comprehension, we were trying to understand only what was written in the text and answering the questions following जो ऊपर ऊपर से चीज दी थी दी हुई है किसी टेक्स्ट में, हम लोग उसको समझते थे और फिर क्वेश्चंस आंसर करते थे. नाउ व्हेन वी टॉकिंग अबाउट क्रिटिकल रीडिंग, इसमें हमें अंडरलाइंग आइडिया यानी कि ऑथर बेसिकली क्या कहना चाह रहा है, उसने जो टेक्स्ट लिखा है उसमें, उसको समझने की हम लोग कोशिश करेंगे. So critical reading involves memorization as well as understanding of the text. Okay, so when we are talking about critical reading, it would mean कि आपको जो भी सारा आइडिया है टेक्स्ट का वो याद भी रह गया और फिर वो समझ भी आ गया. ठीक है, सिर्फ आपने स्किम नहीं करना. स्किमिंग वुड बी वन पार्ट ऑफ क्रिटिकल रीडिंग, बट ओवरऑल आपने उसको याद भी करना है, समझना है कि अंडरलाइंग आइडिया क्या है किसी टेक्स्ट का. Additionally, the text is broken down into its components and examined critically in order to achieve a meaningful understanding of the material. So when we are critically reading something, we would try to break down the text into different parts or components कि author ने किस किस एरिया को टच किया है. So we would try to break it down into different aspects. जैसे हम लोग for example when we are talking about writing, okay, so I hope that you remember कि हम लोग जब writing की बात कर रहे थे तो हम लोग जब फॉर्म कर रहे थे जब कोई टेक्स्ट, तो हम लोगों ने डिस्कस किया था कि हम लोगों ने डिफरेंट डिफरेंट एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ राइटिंग और डिफरेंट परस्पेक्टिव से चीजें रखनी है, फिर उनको मर्ज करके एक राइटिंग फॉर्म बनानी. सिमिलरली व्हेन वी आर ट्राइंग टू रीड जो किसी और ने लिखा हुआ है, तो हम लोग उसको इसी परस्पेक्टिव से देखेंगे कि जब वो लिख रहा था तो उसने ये डिफरेंट डिफरेंट एस्पेक्ट्स टच करके उसने फिर एक टेक्स्ट फॉर्म किया है. ठीक है, सो नाउ दिस इज काइंड ऑफ अ रिवर्स प्रोसेस. जैसे हम लोग लिखते थे तो नाउ वी वुड सी के हाउ द प्रोसेस ऑफ राइटिंग वाज फॉर द ऑथर. ओके, बिकॉज वी आर नाउ द रीडर्स, सो देयर इज सम अदर ऑथर जिसने वो लिखा है. सो हम लोग अब उसकी साइकोलॉजी को देखेंगे कि उसने अंडरलाइन किन किन कंपोनेंट्स को टच किया है, and then we would try to break the text into different components and then examine each of them critically to try to understand what is the meaning that author wants to put. I hope it's clear. Moving forward, these are two very essential terms, passive reading and active reading. This is important to understand. It is very much clear from the name as well. When we're talking about passive reading, it is inactive process and there is no motivation. And when we read it thoroughly, okay, so that would be kind of a passive reading. So when we're reading thoroughly, we would miss out a lot of data and we would assume things, okay, and we would see okay, what important underlying ideas are. We would be missing all those assumptions as well. So for a passive reader, there would not be that much value and insight to the text as compared to the active reader. Okay, so the name suggests passive reading is an inactive process, and active reading involves interacting with the text and therefore requires significantly more energy. So when we are talking about active reading, so that would be more of critical in nature, and when we are talking about critical reading, it would always involve active reading. Okay, so active and passive reading are clear from the name as well. When we are talking about active reading, it would mean that we are now deliberately, consciously trying to interact with the text. So when we are reading something, for example, this is a paragraph, we are this is some writing piece on this slide. So when we are trying to read it actively, we would try to interact with what is written. Okay, we would try to formulate that there are definitions of active reading and then critical reading, and then there is the additional paragraph and there is this title, and we would try to break down this slide or this text into different parts, that what is written. So we would try to interact with it. While when we are reading passively, we would just see the slide that yes, it is about active and passive reading, that's it. Okay, so this is the difference between active and passive reading. And when we're talking about critical reading, it would always require active reading. Okay, so the active reader invests sufficient effort to understand the text and commit important details to memory. So when we are trying to consciously put some effort to read something, to understand the text, that would mean that we are putting some sufficient effort in terms of time, in terms of concentration, in terms of some energy that we are putting in to understand the text. So that is how we can actually critically analyze the text. So for a active reader, it is important that he understands different pieces of data, the assumptions, underlying arguments of the author, and then examines or evaluates them critically. They rely on the personal experiences and knowledge of theory to analyze the text. Now, this is again a very important point. When we are actively reading something, we would also try to relate it to our personal experiences. Okay, for example, this is the same text that we are reading. So you would see, yes, I've already talked about it. We have already studied something, and this also happened to me in the past, or I have studied this. So all these are personal experiences and personal knowledge that would come on the upper surface, and we would try to relate the situation to ourselves as well. So when we would read certain stories in this semester, so we would try to analyze or relate ourselves and our personal experiences to the story that we're talking about. Before we move forward, I want you to understand what is the difference between description and interpretation. Okay, these are very two important terms that would be often used. How we describe certain thing and how we interpret certain thing. So sometimes they are also mistakenly used interchangeably, while when we see them and we try to actively understand the meaning of both words, description and interpretation, we would see that these are two different words and the meaning is different. So look at the picture that I have attached here and try to describe it. Okay, maybe you can pause the video and describe the picture and what do you understand by description, and then you can comment what is description of this picture. And don't forget to write your roll number and your name, so I have an idea that who is writing the responses. Okay, so now if you have resumed the video, you would see if you have described it, or when we are describing this picture, we might say that there is this road, there is a girl, there are some trees, and there are no leaves on the trees, there are buildings, or maybe we would see that there is sunset time, and all these things that are in the picture and that no one can say, claim or debate. Those things would be description and how we describe the picture. Okay, now something that is would be contrary to that would be interpretation. Now I want you to pause this video and write your interpretation for this video. Alright, now when we are trying to interpret this video, we can assume different things. We can interpret it related to our personal experiences, our personal thoughts. For example, someone could say there, this is the girl is going very lonely. Okay, or someone would say the girl is searching for friends, or the girl is walking towards maybe her home, or maybe she is going to a job, or someone would say she is running, okay, and it is her evening walk. Or there could be lots of different interpretations. Or if we can interpret it the situation, we can say that there is a protest, okay, or there is some calm, or maybe due to lockdown she's the roads are empty and she's running, or maybe we could say that there is a thief after her. So there could be lots of interpretations. Every one of us could interpret the picture differently, and all the thoughts that would come into your mind would be based on your personal experiences and personal knowledge, that how would you see this picture, and then you would analyze this picture accordingly. Okay, so when we're talking about description, everyone would describe the picture similarly. Okay, so all the things that are evident on the surface, and all of us would describe the things in that way. But when we're talking about interpretation, all of us would interpret this picture differently based on our personal assumptions and experiences. So this description and interpretation for this picture was here. Similarly, when we are reading a text, so when we have certain words and text is given, so when we are trying to describe what is written, would be same. Everyone would describe it similarly. But the point, a critical reading involves interpretation. By interpretation, we would mean how we are trying to understand or analyze the situation from our own personal experiences. Okay, so you can remember this example of description and interpretation, and it would be used for reading now. Moving forward, when we're talking about a critical reader, as a critical reader, one should reflect on what the text says. Okay, so um, so there would be some facts given into the text. Okay, so you can make notes, you can paraphrase what is written and into your own words, or in key points you would remember what the text says. Then as a critical reader, you should be able to describe what the text says. Okay, you should be confident that you have understood. So by description, we would mean try to summarize or give us the central idea of the passage or the text. Okay, so in central idea, you would describe what was written. Now, as a critical reader, you should also be able to interpret the text. By interpretation of the text, we mean you should be able to critically analyze it. Now, you might have seen oftentimes we have in exams we have a question, critically analyze whatever topic is given. Okay, so when we're talking about critical analysis of a topic, we would mean that you should tell what the text was about, you should describe it, like tell the central idea, then also interpret it as well. Okay, so by interpretation, we would mean critically analyze the topic. By critical analysis, we would say how that topic relates to our circumstances, our context. How would it relate or affect my personality? How would it affect my friendship, my social relations, or whatever the topic is? Then you would try to interpret the topic into your own personal context. Okay, so interpretation is very important when we are talking about critical reading. Alright, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. In the next video, we would learn about how we can actually read critically and the process of doing so. So stay tuned for that video. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.